with a dad bod god. Just kind of like
the blood fighter Alex Cologne, and you.
Hey, this is Billy Starks.
Everybody, it's the epitome of style with the smile, the human hype machine, and co-host of Oh You Didn't Know, Ryan Katz. And
Well, this is your boy OG Kevin Gill from the legendary and revolutionary Game Changer Wrestling crew. You were watching Drinking at Moe's. Drink it.
All right, everybody, welcome to a special edition of Drinking at Moe's. This one's going to be a bit of a year in review, going over the top episodes, whether it be on the YouTube version or the podcast platforms, Spotify, Anchor, Apple, so on, because you know what, they actually are different after I went looking around to put together a list. We'll go over the views and listens on the different episodes and give a little, story behind all of them. Want to be sure, the tongue tied there, but want to be sure to let everybody know video episodes brought to you by Reaper Apparel. They're wanting to encourage everybody to break the mold, get out of their comfort zone, and live their best life. Pretty good message, if you ask me. So let's get right on into it. Before we start off, we're going on top 5. There was a honorable mention on the YouTube side. We're going to start off with that, where, it came in close, just literally one view off, but we'll lead off with that one. It was with Merrick Brave of Black and Brave Academy, the Brave and Black and Brave Academy, if you will. It comes as no surprise, with Merrick Brave, he has a good career going, in his own right. And, him and Seth Rollins there with Black and Brave Academy have become a destination spot for, wanting to get trained in professional wrestling. It is no secret that, pretty much anywhere when you list off who you've been trained by and you mention Black and Brave Academy, they're going to take you pretty damn seriously. And it was definitely an honor to get to have them on the show. And, I wish Merrick Brave and the Black and Brave Academy all the success in the world. Now, going top 5. This one literally just beat out Merrick Brave by one view, and it was actually one of my first couple of episodes I ever did with Joseph Anderson. I gotta be sure Joseph Anderson, because if you remember watching that episode, he kind of got on me about Joseph Joey Anderson, that whole shift. But hey, he's been a pretty good friend of mine for quite a while. And when it came down to me getting this podcast started, he was definitely one of the first ones that I wanted to have on. He was one of the first that I asked and was definitely excited. He's had a great career all throughout the Midwest, going from here in Nebraska to Iowa to Minnesota, the Dakotas, all over. And winning titles all over the place. Here in Omaha, he is a former Magnum Wrestling champion, cashing in their Piggy in the Bank, which was their version of the Money in the Bank, winning in a ladder match. And he cashed it in after the wrestler Red Wing, who another pretty popular guy, very big. I swear his arms are about as big as my thighs, but that's beyond the point. Carlito, who was making an appearance there, actually beat him. And then Joseph Anderson came in with the piggy bank and cashed it in and won. Funny thing is, and those up there might remember, when he came sliding into the ring, he actually broke the piggy bank. So it was funny. And my funny memory from this particular episode, it was right after one of the Magnum Wrestling shows. And I had figured that if we were to record in my car, that I thought, maybe we would not have to worry about noise pollution and stuff. That being said, we would get recording, and stupid me didn't realize that, hey, the light is only going to be on in your car for so long. Light kept on shutting off. I had to pause and then do what I had to do, and led for some funny moments, and was just a fun time getting to talk to a friend about wrestling and his career. Next off, number 4, personal favorite episode of mine, Billy Starks. Now, I mean, no real introduction needed here, because anybody that's paid attention to independent wrestling at all here in the country knows who Billy Starks is. She has been all over the place, even venturing over to Japan recently and putting on some great stuff there. I remember asking originally about if she'd be interested and wondering if I'd be able to have her on. And then mentioned it was around before the last school year let out, and just asked if I could get a hold of her after the school year let out, because she was wanting to concentrate on that, which by all means, totally respect that. Education's important. And so I did that. We got it scheduled, and man, she is on fire right now. Recently making her AEW debut on AEW Dark, which, congratulations, Billy. That amazing. Can't wait to see things where they go from here for you. There's debuts that she's going to be making here soon with MLW, and she's still doing her thing there with GCW, and I can't say enough good things. Even at such a young age, she's already leaving her mark. She's helping promote shows. She's already garnering so much respect, and literally the sky's the limit for her. And hopefully, we'll see where she goes from here. I have all the confidence in the world she's going to do amazing. She's on fire right now. Next up, number 3, as far as YouTube views, Buns of Steel Jay Fowler, good buddy of mine. This again was after a Magnum Wrestling show here in Omaha, the promotion run by the now late Jason Strife, which rest in peace. And I got a little something to say at the end of this episode that I personally feel after something that I watched recently really fit. But Jay Fowler is, again, another one of those talents on fire right now. Not just here in Omaha, not just in Nebraska, but Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, everywhere he goes. An absolute credit to any roster, any locker room that he is a part of. He has the charisma, the athletic ability, that just the sky's the limit. A very entertaining talk that we had. And I remember I was you watched the episode. I was a little inebriated, to say the least. I mean, they had some good specials there for beer that night, so I had more than my share. Anyways, we got to talking like I normally do about their careers, and I had given him a little shit about that Buns of Steel challenge that he had been doing. And we had talked for a while about, I can go in there and I can do one. And then, it never ended up happening. So I'm like, hey, you know what? At the end of the episode, I always joke about, his buns are packing like Lex Luger's forearm, having the steel in there. I, did the Buns of Steel challenge and felt like I almost broke my damn hand. But anyways, hand's fine. We're all good to go. Next off, number 2, a more recent episode, but one that I had in line for a little bit. Some personal things happened and he was more than accommodating for it. So all the respect in the world for this man, but former Ring of Honor 6-man tag champ, along with Vincent and Bateman, Dutch. Now, I was absolutely thrilled that I was able to get this guy on the show. Man, he reminds me a lot, maybe a little bit taller of a version of Big Boss Man, Ray Traylor. And man, this was right around the time that we recorded and got this episode out, was right around the time of Bray Wyatt's return to the WWE. And there was all sorts of stories about who's going to be coming with them and what might come of any storylines. And funny thing, when I tweeted about the episode, and those that I've previously told this story about can attest to it, Bray Wyatt himself liked the tweet about the episode. And I remember right after I got that alert that I had DM'd Dutch about, hey, do you know Bray Wyatt? And little side story here, Dutch said that, yeah, they were actually pretty good friends. So, there's all sorts of stuff going around right now about Dutch and Vincent possibly being a part of the whole Bray Wyatt story now that he is indeed back. So, and before I forget, there was also a picture released on social media. It was a little bit ago, maybe a month or so ago, of Vincent and Dutch at, I believe it was NXT. So, yeah, we'll see where it goes, because it was reported that at least Vincent and I believe Dutch were both a part of WWE tryouts at the time. So we'll see where that goes. Next up, number 1, the most watched episode of Drinkin' at Moe's for the year 2022. The actual first ever episode. Pat Powers, the still PWP Pro Wrestling Phoenix champion. Again, he was one of the ones, another good friend of mine, and like I said, another one of the ones that I wanted to have on. Like, they were on my very first list I ever made up, because initially the show started off with me wanting to, interview those that here in the area that I knew, kind of get my foot in the door, get things rolling in that aspect. Pat Powers was the one that I was able to nail down a date first. It was right before a PWP show down at the waiting room in Benson. So they always they put on good shows, always pretty good shows. And my personal favorite of theirs is the Battle of the Phoenix, their Royal Rumble type show. Anyways, back into Pat Powers. He has had a great career, still rolling, still doing his thing there with PWP. He has been throughout the Midwest, going into Iowa. He had a pretty good history there with Magnum Wrestling as well. And it was an honor getting to talk to a good friend of mine and helping me get started on what I believe was a pretty good note. Damn near 100 views so far. And, I know when it comes to, YouTube wrestling interviewers, 100 or so views might not seem like much, but for me, being in there and this literally being the first year that I've been in this and been doing this show, pretty big deal for me, and just very thankful. Next up, the top episodes for the podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, Google, Anchor, wherever you get your podcasts. And funny thing is, there's a lot of ties. A lot of episodes having the same amount of views. So we'll get right into it. First is a tie between Rick Ellis, Brian Blade, and the Definition of Pain T-Rex. Rick Ellis and T-Rex, both pretty big names down there in Southern California. I know both of them from my time in being stationed down in San Diego. Rick Ellis was in some of my first ever independent wrestling shows that I've ever been to, and just really jumped out at me right away. I've mentioned before in episodes that I gravitate towards those that they just ooze that intensity. Rick Ellis was every bit of that. And he took a little bit of time away, but he's been jumping back into it there with the West Coast Wrestling Company, ran by Adam Ginsberg, and they're going to be having a pretty big match, a lights out unsanctioned match at the next upcoming show for the West Coast Wrestling Company. So keep your eye out for that. And it was good getting to catch up, because he has his own podcast, the Random Podcast, that I've listened to quite a bit, and getting to share stories of his podcast and mine and talking his career was awesome. Next, I said that one of the other people tied in here was Terex, another guy that I had some familiarity with during my time being stationed in San Diego. Now, I'm telling you, when most people think of big men in wrestling, you don't think of guys that can pull off some of the stuff that this guy can do. I remember one of the first times I saw him pull off repeated standing moonsaults. And I'm telling you, holy shit, my jaw on the floor. And, getting to catch up, because now he's doing a lot of the deathmatch style, which I respect. It takes special somebody to get into deathmatch wrestling, because ain't for the faint of hearted, as anybody that's watched it can attest to. And it was awesome getting to talk about his career and some stories about how a lot of footage that he had gotten stolen, and that obviously an unfortunate circumstance there, but he's been doing good. He's doing a lot of work with XPW now. They're having their rebirth, and wish him all the success in the world. Next off, we have the last one that was tied with Rick Ellis and Terex for views is Brian Blade. Now, Brian Blade, promoter, owner of MWA Wrestling. They do a lot of shows in the Lincoln, Nebraska area. They go all over Minnesota, Iowa, all over the Midwest. And we scheduled this, and he can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong here, but I believe it was right around the time that Brian Blade got announced as one of the class of 2022, in the Nebraska Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. And we got to talk a lot about his career and set up some stuff for me being able to be a part of the induction night for the 2022 class of the Nebraska Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. An absolute honor for me to be able to be a part of that whole evening. And him and another good friend of mine, Chris Metry, or in the ring known as Chris Havius, with PWP being another member of that class. Congratulations to both of them. Next up, we have Hunter Freeman. Now, Hunter Freeman got his start here in the country anyways, right around the time after I left San Diego after my enlistment was done. And it was entertaining getting to hear stories about getting his start training over in Japan, where things can be a little hard on the new guys, which it's understandable, because you don't want to just baby people into the business. And over in Japan, they definitely don't do that. And now he's getting his name out there and doing his thing on the deathmatch circuit, even most recently being a part of the Nick Gage Invitational. And just awesome to see everything that he's being able to accomplish, being involved with Level Up down in San Diego, being involved there with B-Boy, one of my personal favorites. Hopefully someday we'll get him on. Anyways, we'll go on next. We have another tie here for listens, and this is between the first episode with SoCal Crazy and Christopher Disney of One Ring Circus and other promotions there in Southern California. We'll start off Christopher Disney. It was interesting getting to talk to him and hear about stories with One Ring Circus. And the thing that I loved hearing was what he wanted to do to set apart One Ring Circus to the plethora of independent wrestling promotions down there in Southern California. And there's a ton of them. And we talked about, promotions needing to find a way to set themselves apart, and, getting to hear how he intended on doing that. It was amazing, very entertaining, getting to hear everything. And next, SoCal Crazy, like a brother to me, SoCal wrestling legend, one of the, and people down there can attest to this, one of the most well-respected guys in that whole damn area. He had taken some time away from wrestling and is starting to work his way back in. He had stage 4 cancer and ended up beating it. And it was awesome getting to catch up with him, because it had been a while since we had actually talked, and getting to share stories about times that, I saw him in my very first ever independent wrestling show down there in San Diego, and hearing, his aspects and how his mind works. And now he recently held a benefit show for colon cancer awareness and actually dedicated it to the memory of my 2 little girls that I lost. He was one of the first people that I personally told after that all happened, and didn't ask for him to dedicate it to them because it was already dedicated for a very great cause, and he insisted. So I'm like, I can't thank you enough for that. And right now you can actually go on to SoCal Wrestling TV on Roku, the Roku channel, and that show is on there. Highly recommend it. It was a damn good show. Next up, the episode I had with Andrew Jasic. He ran the New Wave Pro Wrestling promotion along with Trevor Allen, aka Ryan Stone. And this was the promotion that held my first ever independent wrestling show. And just holy crap, so many great memories there, and getting to talk to him about some of those, and getting to talk about, memories of the last show for that promotion, because shortly after I got back from deployment, they ended up holding their last ever show. And him and his partner, Trevor Allen, aka Ryan Stone, have both since retired. But, Andrew Jasic has had a great career doing things, a very good motivational speaker and doing his thing, different commentator spots with different promotions. Wishing him all the best, and he's been a very good friend, very good support system with some of the things that I've had going on. Now, to kind of round off the episode, here recently, here in the Omaha area, we lost an icon, no other way to put it, in Jason Strife after a long battle with cancer. If I have one regret with my podcast, is that I never got to reschedule the episode that I had planned with him. But this was right around the time that things started to kind of go downhill with his health. And, I told him that, his health was more important. We'll figure out a time, which sadly never ended up being able to happen. But, he did amazing things here in the Midwest and all over pro wrestling, because he ventured out to Southern California, which is where I actually met him. And he has been involved in various WWE tapings. And sometimes you might not have recognized it was him unless you knew him at the time. And most recently, he was actually on AEW Dark against Powerhouse Hobbs. And, it's a sad time for everybody here in the local area. I credit him with, the chance meeting him. I even found out from that Magnum Wrestling was a thing up here. So came back and ended up meeting some of the best friends that I have right now. And even, can even credit him. If it weren't for me meeting him, I might not have met my wife even, because I love telling the story about how I ended up meeting her at a wrestling show. So to kind of round off what I wanted to say about Jason Strife, thank you for everything. And I most recently, just yesterday, as of the recording of this, had watched the documentary on Peacock about Ric Flair. And there was a saying that was said on there that he said multiple times, but I felt it kind of fit with Jason Strife now too. And it goes by, and I'll borrow the phrasing of this: diamonds are forever. And so is Jason Strife. Rest in peace, Jason Strife. I cannot thank you enough for everything that you've done, not just for me, but the entire wrestling community. Your legacy will indeed live on forever. Through the friends of yours that are still wrestling out there, through the many students that you trained, through the fans of yours, and through everybody that you inspired to be involved in this crazy world of professional wrestling in whatever capacity that they are involved in it with. I hope that you look down on all of us with a smile, and well, this isn't goodbye. It's just a see you later. That is it for this episode. I hope that everybody has had a good new year. And here's the 2023. Let's fucking go.